Hello and welcome to the Focal Events Dirty Reiver Diaries. Your hosts today are Brian Singleton and Neil Atkinson.
Morning, Neil. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good indeed. Excited because we're not so far away.
We are. We're coming rapidly onto Dirty Reiver Week. It's the Friday before the week of the event. We will be on site from the Monday. Final rider brief has gone out to all riders with GPX files. And if you haven't got those, the details are also on the website under event and rider information. So hunt that out. Make sure that you do read all that information because there's some important stuff in there. A couple of things to flag up. In particular, Neil, camper vans.
Yeah, when you turn up on Friday with your camper van for the weekend, just follow the directions to the Forest Depot. There's a registration area there. We can then allocate you a place within 5 to 10 minutes ride of this event start, and there's various costs that go with that. So closer, the more expensive. Further away, the cheaper they are. If you turn up early, you get the first choice.
Yeah, perfect. And important thing to note there is that, you know, if you have a camper van, that's fantastic, but we're going to try and locate you, and that'll be you for the weekend. All the pitches are scenic, rural. Yeah, they're cracking places, and you can get sort of settled in for the weekend. Perfect. So Saturday, we've got a slightly different start time, but that doesn't mean to say you can have an extra hour in bed, does it, Neil?
It doesn't at all. As those who came last year, there was backed up a little bit on the road. So this year, what we're asking you to do is turn up early, guys. Really turn up early and be plenty of time. You've got time for faffing when you get to the event itself. So if you can try and be there by 7:30, that'd help everybody in total.
Parked.
Sorry, Ryan.
Unpacked.
Oh yeah, unpacked. Yeah. We've got an events company, a traffic events company there. So please just follow their instructions, whether it's signs or marshals. They will direct you to the correct parking place.
Yeah, and we're going to keep the main car park free.
Yeah.
Camper vans this year, because we do have a number of riders who come and use accessibility bikes, so we need to keep some space free for them, and also for some of the day visitors coming to the forest as well. So the main car park will be kept free. So as I say, please come early, make sure you follow the instructions from our parking team, and give yourself plenty of time to get sorted.
There's a lot of information there, Brian. That's all in that rider brief, isn't it?
It is. So, on your drive up then, we've got a fantastic podcast for you. And we're welcoming back somebody who we have chatted to before. It's Stu Bowers from SRAM. They have had a lot of stuff on the go recently. And in particular, we're going to chat about some slightly technical stuff. It's all to do with their new REMX. So let's roll into our podcast. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this one. I like Stu. He's a good lad.
So we're joined in this chat by Stu Bowers from SRAM to chat all about SRAM's latest tech developments, of which there's been quite a few over the last few months. So welcome to the chat, Stu.
Hey, thanks very much. Pleased to be here again. I think this is my second appearance on your podcast, so good to be.
You're a lucky one.
Yeah, that was second prize, 2 appearances. I think specifically we're going to talk a little bit about the new Axis direct mount gear system, which we're seeing coming through on a lot of bikes, and it does look super cool. But I thought I'd start off with my very basic explanation of UDH, because we might well refer to that a couple of times when we have this conversation. So UDH means universal derailleur hanger, and effectively it is it's the bit that's bolted onto the bike, which we then attach the rear derailleur to. And those UDH mounts do vary from bike to bike, and if anybody does have them, make sure you've got a spare, because sometimes they're very tricky to get hold of. But that part of the system and again, please correct me if I'm wrong here, Stu, is designed almost as a fail-safe. So I'm sure, you know, most riders have had it. We've been out and about on the trails. You get a stick stuck in your rear wheel. It whips round and clunk. And instead of either breaking the frame or breaking or damaging the rear mech, etc., what happens is your UDH, which is universal derailleur hanger, is designed as a part of the system, is designed to break and spare the rest of the setup. And yeah, as I say, we've kind of, yeah, quite a few of us experienced this in the past. Would that be a fair way of summarizing that part of the system so far, Stu?
I'll give you a 7 out of 10. You did a really good job. You've covered some of the key things, but there's a couple of things that I would like to add a little bit of additional depth to, if that's okay. So yeah, the UDH, as you said, is universal derailleur hanger, and the clue is kind of there in the name. We, as SRAM, wanted to develop one hanger that we had kind of buy-in from all of the big frame manufacturers in the world globally, so that as a rider, you take away all the complexity of needing to find, you know, it's a needle in a haystack, literally. If you were to try, I don't know how many there are, but it would be tens of thousands, I think, different variants of derailleur hangers in the market. Some bikes even have multiple options within the same model of bike. You know, it's bonkers how many different derailleur hangers there are. So we did it on the mountain bike side really, several years back, and we found there was really, good consistent buy-in from all the brands that was the way forward. So that a universal derailleur hanger is exactly that. It is a one product thing that will fit on almost every bike and obviously we provide the dimensions of that to the frame manufacturers, so they have to manufacture their frame to that spec. So one of the things you said in there was that there are different variants of a UDH, which is not strictly true. There aren't. Well, there slightly are, because some frame brands do have their own ways of achieving it, but ultimately it is the same thing, and that is part and parcel of the benefit of it. So if you're a rider and you're out in the middle of nowhere, or traveling around the world or something, bike packing, you should in theory have an easier time finding a UDH if you had a problem with your derailleur hanger. Some of the other things you said were, of course, that the derailleur hanger is there as a sacrificial part. That is indeed correct. That's what we know and love about the derailleur hanger. In that if you do have a crash, or as you said, a stick goes in your wheel or whatever, that hanger should be the part that breaks first, not your frame, which is obviously the big expense. So that's what it's there to do. That said, it also brings with it an awful lot of variables that maybe a lot of people don't understand, which adds a lot of complexity into how you shift gears, actually, because if there are tens of thousands of different derailleur hangers, there are tens of thousands of potential different positions for your derailleur to be bolted onto your bike. So the other thing the UDH does is it provides a bit more consistency there, which is another addition. But then you also mentioned our latest products there, the new SRAM Red Explore Axis group set, which has what we would call a full mount derailleur, or some people call it direct mount. And that's a different beast in itself, because then what we're doing is we're taking away the derailleur hanger completely, and then we're mounting the derailleur directly onto what would have been the UDH mount on the frame, but now the derailleur mounts there itself. So, and there's a number of benefits why that's a good thing, some of which we kind of touched on just there.
So what you're doing then through that new way, that full mount, is you're removing lots of the variables as to the position of the derailleur and chain in relation to the cassette.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, if we take away a derailleur hanger, we've taken away the most variable point of gear setup. If we are now bolting the derailleur directly onto that central axle, basically that's the center point of everything, we now know where that derailleur sits in relation to the cassette. And when everything's all bolted up tight, we know exactly where that is in relation to each gear. So that means that we can do away with all of those little adjustment screws that mechanics talk about as some kind of black art to setting up gears. All that's gone. There's no B gap adjust, there's no high screw, no low screw, because we don't need it anymore. Those screws really are only there on a derailleur because of the variance in the hangers. they're there to kind of compensate for not knowing where the mech sits in relation to everything else. So as we've now eliminated that problem, that's one of the key benefits of a full mount derailleur.
Yeah. So really, this is very much simplifying the whole system, so that from what you're saying, once that derailleur is fully mounted on and the wheel on, you don't need to make any manual adjustments to the actual derailleur in terms of where it's tracking and how far the chains away.
I would say in 99% of cases, yes. I've built a lot of bikes with the full mount derailleur, and in almost every case, you take the derailleur from the box, you fit it on the bike, and in the work stand, the gears are perfectly aligned. But of course, there are occasionally anomalies with different frame designs or whatever, and you might still need a tiny micro trim adjust, which we can still do through the Axis system the way we have done in the past.
And so all of that trimming is done. Is that all done through the SRAM app, the SRAM Axis app?
There's two ways you can do it. So you can do it manually yourself at the shifter. So there's a tiny little Axis button behind the shift button itself.
Okay.
If you press and hold that button, the shifter then becomes an adjustment point. So it adjusts the derailleur the same way that the shift button would work. So if I'm using on my bike, my right hand lever would shift to the right, so down the cassette. If I hold the Axis button and then press that shift button, it's actually going to make a micro adjust in the same direction. And each one of those button presses is a tiny adjustment, and you can actually see the mech move. It's something like 0.1 or 2 of a mil each time, each press. Forgive me, I can't remember the exact movement, but you'll be able to see those tiny steps changing as you can adjust it. And you do the same if you go too far, then you go to the other shifter, you press the little Axis button, and you can shift it back till you find your sweet spot. So it's a bit like using an electronic barrel adjuster in that sense. So there's that micro adjust still exists. Just as I say, there's some nuances sometimes between different frame designs. So but as I mentioned, almost every bike I've built, it hasn't been necessary.
So that micro adjust on the lever, presumably that means that you can do it almost on the fly, but it also means that you do not need then to get your phone out and activate the app to make any adjustments.
You can do it in the app. Sorry, I kind of went on so much of a rant about the levers there. I forgot to mention that. The other option is you just log into your bike on the app, and there is a micro adjust feature in there. That one's quite nice actually, because you can see it gives you a number.
Visual.
So you can get like a plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So as you go, you can see where you're at. So you can do it directly in the app as well.
So obviously the design of the mech is strikingly different. You know, when you look at it, it's very impactful in its design. And as you say, it does full mount, it bolts straight onto the frame. What are the extra benefits of having that bolted onto the frame, Stu? I've heard talk of the fact that you can put a lot of pressure onto that rear mech and it doesn't affect or have any impact on the kind of bike, etc. What are the kind of benefits of having that directly mounted straight to the frame?
So I would say we could really put that into 2 key words that we talk about within SRAM with this product, and that is precision and resilience. So precision is all about, again, eliminating one of the things that was a negative of an old style derailleur hanger, and that was that you never quite knew what the material of that derailleur hanger was. And I found this a lot. Obviously, I've been a bike mechanic for many years as well, and you would find some bend really easily, some are actually very hard to bend. Now, the thing when you've got electronic shifting is actually you've got a very powerful motor moving there. So if you wanted a very crisp and precise gear shift, what you need from your derailleur is a very stable platform to shift from. If the derailleur hanger happens to be not great in terms of its construction, you could actually be losing some shift performance from there'll be some flex in the system, let's say. So by full mounting the derailleur, again, we can control for that. Like, we know that is the stiffest, strongest connection of that rear derailleur to the bike through the through axle. So there's zero flex. There's no way that shift can be anything but super precise, super crisp. So that's one of the benefits, is that precision of the shift.
You mentioned there the through axle. So it's actually screwing into the through axle itself, is it?
The through axle is kind of the final part of the setup procedure. As you tighten your through axle through the middle, that's basically what snugs everything up in the end.
Gives you that platform.
So we're effectively bolting the derailleur to the end of the free hub body. So yeah, the other part of that, of course, is resilience, as I mentioned, is the other sort of key word. And again, the strength of that full mount is a huge benefit. So I think if you were to look on our website, you'll be able to see videos where we show people standing on the derailleur, for example. And it's something you never ever would have thought to do in the past. But these full mount designs are so strong from an impact point of view. So that's great if you're if you're unlucky enough to crash in an event. You're going to be able to pick your bike up and you're not going to have your gears all over the place. Nice. One of the worst things with a standard hanger is even if you have a simple crash in an event, or even sometimes I go so far as to say I've seen people put their bikes in their car even and bend the derailleur hanger. They don't know they've bent it, or they forget to recheck their gears after. And then the first time they go to shift to the biggest cassette sprocket, because it's bent inwards, the mech's now not set to the right place. And that's when we see the derailleur going in the spokes. The next thing, that derailleur has come around and caused a lot of damage, basically, because it's gone in the spokes. So one of the things with the full mount is that knowledge that that's never going to happen. You've got so much strength and resilience there. So even traveling with your bike to events, putting it in the bike bag, all those kind of things, it just simplifies it for the rider. It's almost like taking away that fear factor that your derailleur hanger is going to get out of alignment.
Yeah.
I noticed that when we just got some new bikes delivered, as we were chatting about earlier before this, and literally we pulled it out of the box and in a way put the front wheel on and it was all gone. And that was a brand spanking bike from pulling it out of the box. Within 15 minutes we were riding it. There was no messing around with it. It's normally taken me longer when I go on holiday to put my bike together than it did receiving a brand spanking new bike to getting on into riding it. And that goes down to exactly what you're saying there. So yeah, great stuff. And this podcast is just I've been sat here listening to it because it's not really my technically minded stuff. It's made me realise how it works so good, and it really does.
Good. Well, I'm glad I'm hopefully explaining it in a way that makes sense then in that case. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We're trying to really foolproof that derailleur. There's no weak points basically.
Yeah, and one thing we've noticed, going back to the kind of two words, resilience and precision, that you mentioned, is both Neil and I, having now ridden the full mount rear mech, can really testify to the fact that it is next level in terms of its changing. It is incredibly accurate and incredibly quick, and yeah, I can see that, having got rid of that, essentially that moving platform, which is the UDH, and gone to that real lock solid, we're working it from the effectively the rear triangle of the bike, that is then transferring into that absolutely dialed in precision.
Yeah. Now, I think I'm right in saying here, so correct me if I'm wrong though, but you guys, your experience of our full mount derailleur has been in the Eagle transmission, right? So you experienced it as a 12-speed system.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's different with the group set that we're referring to right here, because obviously we're talking in the gravel space now, with the red Explore Axis group set is 13-speed. Right. So that's a different beast again. We've got the ability then to add that 13th sprocket, and that comes from just clever cassette design. We haven't actually needed to use a different free hub body standard or anything like that. It's the same free hub body that we use for our existing road cassette, which is XDR. And from that XDR body, we've been able, with the full mount, to just use a little bit more of the real estate that full mount design frees up at the 10-tooth end. Plus, there's a little bit of additional dish to the cassette, because where the spokes leave the hub on the drive side of the rear wheel, they move inboard.
They come out,
but they don't go vertically up. So there is a little bit of extra real estate there. So if you look at the back of the 13-speed cassette, it's slightly dished.
Yeah.
So you're using some of that available room, and it's a 10 to 46 tooth. And with those 13 cassette sprockets, you've got like a completely different level of gear shifting in terms of never having too big a jumps through the cassette. So the whole thing is just, with the full mount, is just, there's many benefits.
Yeah. So by getting a 10 to 46, but with obviously 13 opportunities within that cassette, what you've been able to do is to reduce the sizes of the jumps between the gears, which gives you the benefits of always being able to find that sweet spot in terms of the cadence, but also make the gears much more slick because the jumps are not as big.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, the first part of that cassette, the gradation of the gears, or the ratios of the gears, if you want to call it that, is effectively the same as our road cassettes. So it's one tooth jumps, like, to begin with. So, and what you'll find is those are the smaller cassettes is where you notice those jumps more, right? So the further you get into the bigger sprockets, the less you notice if it's an additional step. But so we're really focused on, you know, we took a lot of feedback and testing from our pro athletes that are using these products, obviously pre-production, and really fine-tuning those gear jumps to give the best of both worlds. We've got an incredible range of gears. 10 through 46 is you know, a huge range, but with a really good spread of gears that is never going to mean that you find oh, I wish I had one in between. You know, I think that's a really good noticeable benefit of this new group set as well.
And would I be right when I say that I read recently that one of the top pro teams was using this gravel group set in one of the recent classics?
There has been a lot of requests to use it and riders testing with it. I'm not sure what the actual outcome will be come the big spring classics in terms of who might be using it or not. But yeah, definitely the athletes, the pro athletes on the road side are really keen. But obviously, again, that would require them to use a UDH frame. So that would require the particular bike sponsor would have to provide them with a frame that was compatible. But yeah,
I think there is a chart on the SRAM website, isn't there, Stu, that allows you to find out your frame compatibility?
There is, yeah. It's not so much a chart as it is what we call Bike Finder. So we have Bike Finder on the website, and you can go on there and type in your bike or just look to see which bikes are compatible.
Yeah. So obviously got this super slick precision coming out. Is there any other features that Reamec that we haven't touched on that we need to know about as end users?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few straight away. I mean, as I said, there's lots of benefits to this new system. So one of the other really nice features that is in there is what we call the magic pulley wheel. So this is quite an ingenious piece of design by our engineers. Actually, it's so simple when you see it, but actually it's also super cool. So you mentioned earlier about sticks going into your wheel. Well, sticks going into your jockey wheel, the lower one specifically, is what we found from our research one of the biggest reasons for catastrophic rear derailleur failure. Because if you stop or jam that lower jockey wheel, the immediate thing that happens if you're carrying on pedaling is the cage of the derailleur gets pulled sharply upwards. And obviously that's not a good thing. That's when you find like it can, even we've seen people breaking chainstays from that kind of impact upwards. So what the magic pulley wheel does is it's got like a way where the teeth can turn. I'm just trying to, it's much easier to show than it is to explain it in words. The teeth will continue to spin if you stop the middle part of the jockey wheel, let's put it that way.
Right.
So it's a really clever demonstration that we do when we're on events. So if someone wants to see this when we're at Dirty Reiver, by all means come over to the SRAM stand and I can show you this, but you can literally jam
I'll be there first.
Cool. You can jam a screwdriver in the jockey wheel and keep on pedaling effectively.
So it acts like a bit of a clutch.
It's more of a kind of a slip diff in the jockey wheel than a clutch.
No, I know, yeah.
Because it's not like it free spins. It is a resistive thing. So once you do it, you know that something's different because you can feel the resistance from it. But the basic thing is it is at least turning, and that's going to stop your cage from getting ripped off the derailleur. So that's another part of the resilience story of that derailleur. The other thing which I think is a really good selling point, or just from an environmental standpoint, is all the parts that you would potentially damage in a innocuous crash. If you just lie the bike down on a gravel corner or something like that and you scuff all of the surfaces of the mech, we've all done it. They are replaceable as like a service kit. So all of the we call them skid plates on the front of the derailleur come off, and you can buy replacements for those parts, and also the cage itself. So there's a lot of rebuildability you can do with that derailleur as well. Which it's great for the end user, because riders who damage their pride and joy, can bring it back to looking shiny again for a relatively cheap cost. But also it means we're not chucking a working derailleur in the bin. If something you've done in a crash could be replaced, you're just one small part and then you're good to go again.
Yeah. And this is all on the 13-speed Red Explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You did mention in our early chat a little bit about the gear shifters themselves and the brakes, Stu, and you told us quite a nice story about how you were impressed with them at first sight. Can you just tell us a little bit about how they've changed over the current sort of ergonomics?
Yeah, absolutely. There's almost no two things that are the same on it. It's a complete restart, rethink. So the shape of the lever hoods you'll see immediately is a visual change. It's a complete redesign from the existing Red and Force and Rival shape that we've come to know and love. So the new Red was a completely different lever shape for not just for aesthetic reasons, but for a functional reason. So we worked hard on the braking performance from the tops, from the hoods. And in order to do that, we've changed the way that the piston sits in that lever hood. So it's now horizontal piston rather than the old vertical piston. It's a push piston now instead of a pull piston. Without diving too much into real geeky technical nerdiness, basically what that means to you is the feel of the lever is unbelievably light action. So you're going to be able to brake easily with one finger from the hoods. And actually, not only will you be able to feel like it's a very light action, you'll be generating more power as well. So it's a more powerful brake with a significant drop in brake lever force to achieve that. And the example I gave you guys earlier was, before we launched this product, I was at one of our facilities in Germany. I was wandering around the building and I saw a bike leaning up against a meeting room that had the new Red on it. And at that point, it was like still not out there. So I was, quick look at that. So I was, doing what I do, which is just fiddling with things. And I pulled the levers and I was convinced this cannot have any fluid in it. I was sure it was just a prototype that was not pushing any hydraulic fluid. And then I looked more and realized the pistons were actually moving and this was a working, usable brake. So for me, straight away, like that immediate feel is so different to the existing brakes that we have. So that was a huge development for Red Explore.
Cool.
That sounds fantastic. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing that at Dirty Reiver. And yeah, anybody who's listening who is interested in finding out, let's head over to the SRAM tent and see what's going on. Hopefully as well, we might have some of those group sets on some of our Lauf bikes so that people can, potentially have a little ride out with them and test them for themselves. So a little change of hat, Stu. If you take your SRAM one off and put your ZIPP wheels hat on, we have had a few developments recently with the range of wheels. What can you tell us about those and what can we expect to see at Reiver this year?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, ZIPP also have been really busy behind the scenes around that, the launch of the Red Explore. It was cool to come out at the same time with a new wheel development as well. And so the ZIPP 303 Explore wheel came out too back last year. And that was a massive deal for the industry because it was so different to anything anyone had seen before. And I think this is ZIPP all over. Like ZIPP has never been, as a historical brand, afraid of pushing into new areas and trying new things. And so this is a 32mm internal rim width gravel wheel.
Wow.
And put that in context, most downhill mountain bike wheels to date have based around a 30mm internal rim width. So as I say, to contextualize that, when you look at these wheels, that is insanely big.
Yeah.
And then so the counter question to that might be, well, why? What benefit does that bring? And what it does is really, it's all about tire profile. It changes completely the way that the profile of the tire works with that interaction with the rim. So the way we often can kind of talk about it in a way that might be visually able to make sense is that if a child draws a light bulb, okay, you get like this bulbous shape coming out where the base of the light bulb would be. Imagine now expanding the bottom of that light bulb out so that then you get this inverted U profile.
Yeah.
And that's what you're getting basically, even with like a 44, 45 mil tire on that rim.
Yeah.
Find that you get this wonderful like inverted U shape of the tire. So the sidewalls are more vertical. They're not pinched in that kind of light bulb, to use that term, way. And again, I won't completely geek out on the science behind that because it goes on into quite an in-depth conversation. But suffice to say that in terms of tire efficiency and rolling resistance, it is far, far better to have that inverted U profile. You get performance in spades, like literally noticeable rolling resistance benefits and stability benefits, comfort benefits, because actually you can run significantly lower tire pressure for the same rolling resistance. So yeah, for the rider, it's just win-win-win.
Yeah, I was about to say that must increase the stability of the tire at lower pressure when you're cornering if you've got that, you know, wider base profile.
Exactly, because that older kind of way of doing it, which was just to have a narrow rim. If you think narrow rim, wide tire, you get this light bulb shape, and that laterally is very unstable. So you're dead right. You don't you know, if you have a low pressure on that old style setup, if you want to call it that, you could often find in fast corners, it felt like you were rolling the tire under almost, like, So that's the thing of the past with wide rim profiles. And of course, there is now an aerodynamic benefit to that as well. So aero is something which has not been really heavily focused on in the gravel space. Some brands do. I think, you know, brands like 3T were very quick in the early days of the gravel wave to really push the aero story on some of their bike designs. But actually, I think more and more now we're seeing the speeds of the top racers going up and up and up. Races like Unbound, you know, they are moving, and they're moving through air. So aerodynamics is a thing, whether we like it or not. And so there's also benefits to the rider from an aero perspective for having that inverted U profile, because it allows the air to track onto the rim surface instead of being separated. So again, we could geek out about that a lot, but and
I think that whole aerodynamic thing is only going to become more of a focus as we see the gravel scene, and especially the race side of the gravel scene, growing. I think more people are going to start looking at, you know, performance gains, and potentially as we get people coming in from the road who have, you know, traditionally looked at aerodynamics and things. I do think that that's going to become something that, you know, perhaps is on people's radars a bit more.
Oh, 100%, it already is. I mean, look at the amount of people that are running their lever hood shape like pushed in.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've seen that in the big Grand Tours. So, you know, as you know, people look to those fast pro riders for their cues for how they want to set their bike up. So we're seeing already people using kind of tiny narrow bars on gravel bikes, because aerodynamically it pulls your shoulders in. You know, you can get your levers pointing towards the middle and get that kind of aero tuck. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's already there. People are already trying to get those aero gains. Certainly the ones that have got any designs on winning gravel races are already thinking in an aero way. They're all using aero helmets, aero shoe covers, you know, aero jerseys. It's there for sure.
Yeah. And it's really interesting just to see this sort of technology coming through. It's it's fantastic to see that. So in terms of the 303 Explore wheel, then we've talked about the width of that. Is that a fairly deep section rim, or what's the kind of rim profile for that then, Stu? Is it fairly deep, or how does that fit?
Yeah, it's a full-on deep section wheel. We do two variants of the 303 Explore. So the profile of the wheel is on what we call the SW, which is the higher ranging one, is like the traditional ZIPP dimpled profile for additional aerodynamic gains, and then we do a more basic design, still a deep section rim, and then with a smooth rim profile.
So we've talked about the width of the rim there, Stu, and the fact that we've got a 32 internal, which gives you that benefit of extra wide profile, and obviously the knock-on benefits in terms of aerodynamics and be able to run lower pressures, etc. What about the rim itself? What about the depth of the rim and the composition, the construction of that?
Yeah, so the 303 Explore is a deep section wheel set. So again, for the aerodynamic benefits, it's 54 mil deep. Front and rear are the same. We do 2 variants of 303 Explore. We do an SW version, which is the top of the range one, which has the kind of all bells and whistles. So in the ZIPP world, like the high-end wheels have the dimpled profile that most people kind of know and love now. So that's all to do with aerodynamics. And so yeah, that's the high-end one. And then there's an S version, slightly cheaper price point. Same rim profile in terms of the depth, 54 mil, but it's a smooth carbon rim. There's some other tiny changes as well, but that's the main differences.
Yeah. And then in terms of, obviously ZIPP are not just, they don't just manufacture wheels, they do other cockpit components as well. And you mentioned, a set of Explore bars. What's new there?
Yeah, so again, at that point this year when we launched the wheel, we launched a new set of handlebars, which is our SL70 Explore bar. I mean, the first thing is it was our first carbon gravel bar. So we've always stuck to an aluminium bar in the gravel space until this point. So the good thing with carbon, of course, is you can really go to town on some profiles. So there's a couple of nice things, nice features, I think, of the SL70 Explore bar. The most noticeable of all, I think, is the fact that we designed them to pair absolutely seamlessly with the new Red Explore levers. So what's happened in the past, I think, with handlebar shapes is that there's always been a slightly clunky interface between where that lever bolts onto the round profile of the bar.
Yeah.
There was always this kind of little bit of space where the rubber hood met, which you could kind of like double wrap the bar tape or whatever to fill it if you wanted to, if you were fussy. But so this bar has actually got this little additional piece of carbon that sits out into that space, and it creates this lovely seamless transition for your hand into the lever hood. So that was a first for bar design. Like, we'd never designed a bar specific to fit the shifter before, which when you kind of think about it, that's mad that it hadn't happened until now, because we own a handlebar brand and we own a component brand. So yeah, let's have those two working absolutely as perfectly together as they can.
Yeah,
that was a big feature. The other thing is it's kind of got internal hose routing, but from an external way of achieving that. So we've seen loads of obviously internalization of hoses now to keep the front of the bike clean, which again has aerodynamic benefits. The less hose you see in that front space, the better. But obviously for a mechanic, feeding hoses through tiny holes in handlebars is a massive pain. So this has got like this really neat channeling system that's built into the carbon mold. And again, that's something you can only do in carbon. You could never make those molds in aluminium. So it's a way of having the hose almost hidden completely, like it's internal, but it's
external.
So that was a nice feature as well. And then the other thing that we did was we obviously saw a lot of people in the gravel space using our wireless blips, which is the additional shift points that we offer from the Axis family. And those wireless blips now have like a locating point directly on the underside of those bars. So that's another nice feature. And there's also a location point in the drop. So if you prefer to have them down almost like in the drops, there's a way that there's a space in the bar for that, so that it doesn't just add bulk when you stick it on the bar. It's actually like there's a hollowed out section for it to go. So yeah, all those features were co-designed with the Red Explore Axis group set.
And then just for those that maybe don't know what a blip is, just very quickly, Stu.
Yeah, okay. So a blip is a kind of a very small little button. It's a kind of it's a shifter effectively. Well, it's an Axis button. It doesn't have to be a shifter. Obviously, within the Axis family, you can assign our buttons to do multiple things. So actually, you could assign a wireless blip to swipe through screens on your Hammerhead head unit. But yeah, most people predominantly use them as a way to shift from when they're riding with their hands on the tops. So the most common use case is that it gets kind of hidden in the bar tape on that underside of the bar, so that if you're riding with your hands on the tops on a climb, which is where riders like to kind of rest their hands, then you can just with your finger reach under the bar and shift. So you don't have to keep going back to the hoods to change gear. So it's just additional shift points, and you can have multiples of these in an Axis system. So you can have some on the tops, some on the drops as well. So yeah, you can pair in, I think, up to 8. So
right, wow, that's a lot of shift points on your bars, then, isn't it?
So do you have a big think tank room in the heart of SRAM where everyone comes into in the morning and just chucks a load of ideas out. Because to come out with the information that you're coming out with now, it's redesigning everything from what it has been. So there must be some inspiration there that drives people to think differently. How does that all come about?
Well, I think as a brand, as a company, SRAM is evolving now, in an exponential way. Like in the past, I think maybe it was the case that we worked a little bit more in little silos. So the road development team was off in their offices developing cool road products, and then the ZIPP guys were over there in their little rooms developing their products. I mean, not entirely, but maybe that was more the case. But I think what I'm seeing as a working within SRAM now is how much more we pull together as a team, and how much we realize the potential of where that connectivity of our brands, and also having that product that's aligned with others. I mean, there's so much benefit in that. I mean, the Hammerhead example I gave a minute ago is a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
being able to have that integrated, and we actually launched with the Red Road group set and also the Explore Gravel group set. The fact that the Hammerhead unit now was completely seamless integration into that Axis shift family. So we never had that before, but of course it makes sense. It makes complete sense that you're, on the top of the Red Axis shifters, there's these additional buttons, the bonus buttons we call them. So they're right there on the top of the lever hood. We didn't have those in the past, but now we have those additional buttons as well as blips. So there's all these ways that you can press buttons. And you can, as I said, you can swipe through screens on your Hammerhead, which is is another nice thing. If you're particularly on gravel, actually, because I found myself, if I'm rattling down a trail and everything's kind of a bit shaky and a bit, you don't want to take your hands off to swipe a screen. No. So actually, if you do need to move through the screens on your computer head unit, like having that ability to do that from the Axis buttons is great.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm getting at in a roundabout, long-winded way, is that just having that complete ability to integrate our products within the product family that we have makes complete sense, and there's a lot of benefits.
And also across disciplines as well, that you can see that coming across it all as well. So it's from whether it's mountain biking influencing road or vice versa to come out as gravel or whatever it may be, and to have all that lot coming together it's fantastic to see. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with the RockShox brand. Obviously SRAM owns RockShox, so there was even collaboration on that side. That in the past, the road and mountain bike camps, never the twain should meet kind of thing. There was always a little bit of a divide perhaps, but now we see the RockShox engineers just as excited about building forks that work in the gravel space, and there's way more collaboration. The Reverb seat post that we know and love from the mountain bike, there's a gravel version in the Explore family. So we're seeing way more as SRAM as a brand using that knowledge that we've got from all the different sub brands. It seems unfair to call them sub brands. They're all brands in their own right, but
yeah, and it's interesting that you just kind of talking about that kind of seamless transition between disciplines. It seems to be that gravel is very much kind of almost the glue in the middle. It's bringing in things from the mountain bike side, and it's bringing in things from the road side, and the road side of things. I think it's just sort of
gravel's the future.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree, but what I think gravel does very well is it's still in flux. There's a lot of stuff happening in the gravel space still. People haven't quite landed on anything for sure. We started off seeing people running 38 and 40 and 42 mil tires. Quite quickly, that's gone up to 44, 45, 50 mil tires are now a thing. And we're seeing, brands are still developing new designs of bikes to cope with these demands of the rider. So we're still seeing gravel evolve. Like, it hasn't really reached an end point yet. So that's great, because from a component brand point of view, it still means we can really innovate and try new stuff and move in a new way. So I think gravel's still exciting.
Yeah. And I think from a brand perspective, it must be exciting for you knowing that there's so much more to be, kind of looking into and going at. And it is a super exciting time. So brilliant. So you've really explained that Very, very well, Stu. I mean, we mentioned just before the chat that we purposefully on this end didn't do any homework because we wanted to try and kind of come at this with a very open mind and look at it, you know, and try and get some, you know, kind of really good detailed information from you. I think you've done that absolutely fantastically. Is there anything that you feel we haven't touched on that is pertinent to that Red Explore group set? Or any of the kind of ZIPP thing, the ZIPP side of discussion we've had?
I think perhaps if I could just rewind a little bit to the replaceable hanger part of that conversation, there was maybe one thing which I didn't delve into. I would say that the most frequent question I get asked by people when I talk about full mount derailleurs is, yeah, but you're taking away my replaceable derailleur hanger, so that surely means now I'm going to break my frame.
Mm-hmm.
And that is always, yeah, I'm asked that question a lot. And of course, the answer is no. You know, SRAM was never going to develop a product that was going to give any additional risk to people's pride and joy and expensive carbon frames. So I think, you know, we've talked about the reasons why it's stronger, more resilient, and so on. But the other thing that I think maybe wasn't even considered before was that actually I, as a mechanic, saw rear derailleur hangers themselves breaking frames, because often they're held in with some little grub screws or you know, there's an additional way to mount it. And if you do have a big impact and that gets ripped around, then actually you're tearing quite often the hanger out of the carbon or whatever it is. So I've even seen derailleur hangers themselves be a detriment to that system. So anyone that asks me that question, that's usually my answer, which is, yeah, there's no way that we're creating a product that's going to put your frame at any more risk. In fact, we've done the exact opposite. We've created a product which is going to protect your frame, because the load path of any impact doesn't touch the frame. Actually, it's going all into the through axle.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's a fail safe in that regard.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Is that, you know, thinking in terms of the mount is completely different, and what you're saying there is that the full mount is actually, you know, the bulk of the kind of platform is the axle and the through axle itself.
Yes, I mean that's the thing that I just want people to understand. Obviously, that the way that is designed to work is it's protecting your frame more. So there's no need to have any anxieties of doing away with a derailleur hanger.
Yeah. So if anybody listening would like to ask Stu more technical questions, or would like to come and see the Red Explore group set in person, up close and personal, SRAM will be at the Dirty Reiver event village. We've got a couple of activations going on, Stu. We've got a SRAM women's ride going on, which people are welcome to come and be part of. Anything else, Stu, in terms of plans for Reiver that you would like to flag up?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we'll be there with several of us on hand all weekend long to answer any questions people might have. Come and find me if you want to geek out some more on tech nerdiness. Always happy to do that over a coffee or a beer.
More a beer.
We're going to do a treasure hunt again. I liked setting that out last year. I had some fun going off into Kielder Forest, hiding our bottles for people to go find. So yeah, the treasure hunt will be a nice little way to get a shakedown ride in on the Friday, hopefully, for people. It'll be a short loop.
Yep.
And you can find all the various stamps on your card and bring that back to the SRAM tent, and we'll give you some goodies. So that's one thing we're going to do. And the other thing is this time around, we just wanted to do like we're going to call it SRAM Lounge, let's say, for want of a better term. We just wanted to offer riders a really comfortable place to just come kick back and, you know, recover after their ride, or just sit around and absorb some atmosphere with a coffee before the ride, whatever you want to do. So yeah, there'll be a very noticeable SRAM lounge at Dirty Reiver this year with some nice comfy leather sofas. So yeah, come along and join us there. We'll have some posh bikes on display as well, for sure. So again, you'll be able to see, touch, feel the new Red Explore Axis components. And yeah, if you've got any niggles with your bike in the run up to the event, we'll also be there with tech support. So yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, Stu, it's been a pleasure again to chat to you, and we look forward to catching you at Dirty Reiver. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, gents, and I look forward to seeing you there soon.
See you later, buddy. Take care.
Well, that was a great chat there, Neil, with Stu. Yeah, I mean, he just explains it so well.
Oh, for me, it just breaks stuff down because a lot of that stuff gets quite technical for me in my mind. But the way he explained stuff was just fantastic. So yeah, well done, Stu, for breaking it down for people like myself.
Yeah, and me as well. It's really good just to kind of get it get it in your mind exactly what this is all about. One of the things that struck me was that ability to completely rebuild the rear derailleur, so that if you do damage parts of it, you can simply replace them. And what a great nod for sustainability. I think that's absolutely superb. And
we've all been in that situation, haven't we, where we've twisted a Miorek and then we've had to get the whole thing again. But now that's revolutionized. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And just from personal experience, the gear shifting is absolutely fantastic. It is so precise, even under load. And I think just working from that real solid platform of that direct mount, just really makes those gears so crisp. So if you do get a chance, pop across to the SRAM booth and chat to Stu and have a look at what they've got. If you want to have a little test ride, bringing in one of our other sponsors, Lauf, they're going to have a fleet of test bikes, and those test bikes will have the new SRAM fitted. So there'll be a great opportunity for the air to not only test a bike, but also give the gears a little test. What else have we got going on at the SRAM booth then, Neil?
Well, all day they've organised a treasure hunt. Now, that'll be a series of locations to go to try and find something in that location, and come back and see Stu, and he'll be able to swap that for a little gift. So that's going on out through all the day. But also at the dentist time, 2:30, Rachel Walker is going to be leading a women's social ride out. They're going to be meeting out in the SRAM tent as well, which, for instance, is going to be done up like a coffee lounge. And if you do go out in that lounge, you will get a free cake and a free coffee.
Sounds great. And before we deteriorate the conversation anymore with those puns, Neil, and the 2:30, for those who didn't catch that one, I think we'll sign off. We've got quite a lot to do. Riders, you've got to get yourself packed and up the road, and we'll see you all in Kielder.
Yeah, make sure you turn up early, guys. Happy gravelling.